Welcome to the Protecting Your Nest podcast. The T in the nest is really important because it focuses on how we think. And how we think is shaped by the E in the rope in the acronym, which focuses on making sure our life experiences serve us. Navigating life's journey alone is not really necessary. We do have friends, we have family, and we even have work colleagues who help us along our way. But just imagine if we could engage a professional whose job is to help bring us to that point where we're being the successful people we intend to be, lifting our talents, helping us overcome challenges, acquiring new beliefs and habits, while inspiring us that to be the kind of people we've always wanted to be, but most importantly, to live a balanced life. So imagine living your life purpose. Imagine achieving that with the help of a coach. Well, today's guest is Roderick Lambert, who is an Englishman with Czech Republic roots, having lived in the Czech Republic for over 20 years, but who was born in Great Britain, where he studied at some of Britain's most prestigious schools. He's a guy who's very passionate about helping people find their way in life. He's a certified coach and experienced mentor. His career has spanned managerial positions in companies and corporations of various sizes. He's been an HR director and has done a lot of work in the Czech Republic, but even in Europe, the Middle East, and in Africa. His major focus now is coaching. And I want to read his mission, which I really thought was inspiring. He says, I help busy humans, go from being, is it still worth it, to I know who I am, I know what I want, and I'm ready to go and get it. And he draws from his own experience where he pivoted away from corporate handcuffs to an exciting new life. And I'm really excited to have him because I think many of us are busy human beings and we really want to learn how to be less busy so we can focus on all the things we want to achieve. So with that, Roderick, I welcome you to Protecting Your Nest.
Thank you very much, Doc, for that excellent intro. I couldn't have done it better myself for sure. And it's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Well, what I love about you is that, I saw some of the social media activity you had and I saw how engaged you were. And then I saw coach next to your name. And when I saw that, I said, this may be the right guy to come to the podcast and talk about coaching. And I really believe in coaching. When I learned about Toyota and the lean methodology, I worked with George Trachillis, who helped me. He actually wrote a book with Jeffrey Liker of the Toyota Way. And so I had a chance to literally be coached by the people who helped write the books about lean and Toyota. So I really am, and I still keep those relationships even today. So I do value coaching and I will continue to receive coaching as a valuable tool. So as we get started, let's go backwards a little bit. Let's go back to London. Let's go back to 1974. It was a very special year. That's when you entered the world. And I want you to tell me a little bit about your life back then when you started your journey, and also maybe a little bit about your previous career prior to focusing on coaching.
Okay, well, yeah, sure. 1974, London, that's right. I was born to a Czech emigre who escaped the Czechoslovakia as it used to be in 1968 when she left. And ended up in London, and an English dad who's a musicologist, and I have a younger sister called Petra. And I sort of inherited from my father's side, in particular, and his mother, a kind of musical talent, I suppose some people have called it. And I was able to earn music scholarships to private schools in the UK, and that's something quite special, because I think only 7% of people or children in the UK get to go to private schools because they are horrendously expensive. But so I managed to reduce the fees considerably thanks to earning music scholarships, which enabled me, amongst other things, to be able to be a chorister, one of those boy singers in St. George's Chapel, Windsor, where I don't know if you followed recently, recently, of course, the Duke of Edinburgh's funeral that was there, but also Prince Harry's wedding, was it 1 or 2 years ago? So I was singing there as a little boy regularly, several times a year for the Queen and the royal family. In fact, Prince Harry was born exactly on the same day as me, but 10 years later. So when he was born, the Windsor Castle bells were ringing on my birthday, and I was sleeping just below the castle in the dormitory. But it enabled me to have a very privileged education, for which I'm extremely grateful for, and led me to study music at university. Nevertheless, graduated from university, I didn't really know what to do with myself. So I moved to my mother's homeland, Czechia, as it's called today, because I'd fallen in love with a Czech girl, Martina, who is now my wife, I'm happy to say. And I've been here since 2024, whatever it is, years. I would like to, just because I know you're in Chicago, just do a quick shout out to the Czech community in Chicago, because I understand that there's a long tradition of Czech emigres, and now, of course, the various generations of those emigres. So moc vás zdravím všechny z vlasti české a mějte se moc pěkně. So just a little Czech phrase for those who still remember the language of the homeland. But yeah, so there I was, 24 or something, in the Czech Republic, teaching English just to earn a living the first year. And I kind of we moved to Prague, which is the capital city, with my wife, and I started working basically in human resources. I kind of fell into it in this small family company. Worked there for 8 years. The role moved away from managerial to generalist human resource function. And after 8 years, I then took my next role, which was in a multinational or French international banking finance group called Société Générale, where I was lucky enough to get to start the role of HR director for their insurance subsidiary. After 4 years, I moved up into the EMEA HR director role for all the insurance companies outside of France. So that was 17 different companies in 17 different countries. And then I was just about to turn 40, and a lot of things happened at that point. And this is now 2014. And one of them was I took the next step in my, up until that point, shiny career to join the big local bank here in the Czech Republic as an HR business partner. I turned 40 and I became a father for the first time. And we adopted a beautiful baby with my wife there. So pretty, they say 40 is kind of that milestone in life. It most certainly was for me, I can tell you that. And and I was there for, that was when I really hit the wall, that corporate wall, and I started to wonder, is it worth it? It was trying to be a great corporate practitioner, to create an impact at work, do everything. It was trying to be a husband. It was trying to be a father. I was getting up at 5 a.m. So that I could leave work by 6, so I could get everything done to be home by 6, to spend a little time with my son and help out my wife. I put on 10 kilograms. I started to have health problems. I simply wasn't able to find time for myself, whether it be for the healthy, the nourished mind or the nourished body. And I started to really question life. I'd also heard from a doctor for the first time, especially I'd never heard before that time, called that I was probably metabolic syndrome because of various problems that I was having. what I did then 2.5 years ago, after much soul searching and researching, is I quit the corporate world. I threw off the golden handcuffs, and left the gilded cage, voluntarily ended my corporate career. Today I live very happily with my wife, Martina, my son, Sebastian, who's going to be 7 in just less than 2 weeks, in fact. So there you go.
Wow. Man, first of all, I love your shout out. I do a lot of shout outs on the podcast. So when you do a shout out to the Chicago Czech community, I want to do the same. I think that's wonderful. Chicago is unique in that we have a lot of different wonderful communities all over the place. In fact, when my kids were young, just to give my wife a break, I would take my kids to different museums. And in Chicago, you have a museum for every culture. And what I did to keep them engaged is that I would not have a time limit. I would just let them wander around. We'd find interesting things to discover. And a lot of times, a lot of the smaller museums, you would almost get like a personal tour. So it was a lot of fun. And then what we would do is try to find a restaurant. So it would be, now, is there a Czech restaurant or community? And we'd go there, try to, eat their food and, and do things. So I really learned a lot about, that's one of the things I like about being in Chicago. There's so much diversity. And I think that's really key. So we can learn different cultures, which is one of the reasons why I like the podcast, because I can meet folks from, I think we have probably a 7-hour difference. We're in totally different parts of the world, yet the technology allows us to connect and share ideas. So I appreciate the shout out, but I also like you had a why, right? So it was a wife, it was a baby, a child that you adopted. So now you have a why, and that's when we start to reflect. So I really love that you had your moment of reckoning and that you were able to move the ship in a different direction. So thank you for that interesting story there. So, and as you know, many of my listeners, are really interested in hearing my guests because we're all about optimizing health. And I really started my podcast, to be honest, as a way to kind of coach my listeners along their way. But one of those pillars of that nest, as you know, is the nutrition piece. That's the diet piece. So I know you said you had some health issues. I want you to dive a little deeper into, what type of health issues you had and what type of dietary approach did you take to fix those health issues?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, sure. So yeah, I mean, I'll go back to the end of the story where I left it, where just before I left the corporate world. Yeah, I put on 10 kilograms. I had some man problems. I had various rashes appearing. Obviously, I wasn't sleeping very well. And I was constantly contemplating the meaning of life, if you like. I had a 1-hour commute each way to work, so that was really useful. It was soul destroying, but it was really useful for self reflection, listening to interesting podcasts, etc. And that helped me to that one, the first aha moment that I was talking about. And that was the one about realizing that in the corporate world and generally in our world, we are there essentially working to create shareholder value for the shareholders. And I realized this is not something that when I'm retired on that porch in my rocking chair, can really say to my grandchildren, I spent all my life creating shareholder value, So that was, can you imagine that, eh? So, and it was the lack of impact, and it was the internal internal politics, and the at times toxic atmosphere, etc. So that was the first aha moment. But the second aha moment was being told by the doctor, metabolic syndrome. I had no idea. I had to look it up. That I in 5 years I could be possibly having my first heart attack. And then getting interested. I don't know how I came across the world of low carb. I think it was on Facebook, it was a group, or I don't know how I heard about it. But I started studying it, and studying it by listening to those kind of people that all of you, or people you've had on your podcast, as well. But the people that your audience will certainly have heard of, like Tim Noakes, Jason Fung, Ben Bickman, David Ludwig, Rob Lustig, the Diet Doctor website, of course, and Brett Scher's podcast. I was listening to all this, reading a lot. I met a great guy in the Czech Republic called Jan Vidiak, who has an encyclopedic knowledge of medical studies, clinical studies, and he is low carb himself. So I was absorbing all this information. I'm the personality type that absorbs. But the second aha moment was, we've got it all wrong. All the information in the lay literature, all the information from the doctor who was telling me, eat less fat, eat more, I don't know, carbs, move more, and get a less stressful job. And I was like, thanks, doc, that's really not going to help. So in the end, I did actually, first of all, I quit my job. And just a couple of months after that, I decided, right, I'm going to try this. And so I did. I basically implemented, I cut the carbs completely. We'd already, with my wife, cut sugar substantially. And so that was, I just cut the rest of the sugar, but all the other carbs, the bread, the dumplings in this part of the world, the pasta, the potatoes, the rice, and just ate meat, eggs, dairy products, and lots and lots of vegetables. I didn't do any particular exercise. I mean, I was free now, so I did go out for a half-hour stroll pretty much every day. And I've always enjoyed a bit of running and cycling, but no kind of specific effort to do exercise for health, just for recreation. And in 5 months, I think it was, I lost 20 kilograms, which is 40 pounds. Basically all the various different health issues I was having went away. Particularly, one very pleasing was the rashes stopped, in my armpits that I was getting. I thought it was deodorant. It probably was partially deodorant or eau de toilette, but they stopped flaring up. It was fantastic. I was sleeping better. I was simply had more energy as well, and I also implemented intermittent fasting. So I skipped breakfast and just had the first meal at lunchtime, and then one in the evening. And it took a while to sort of fine tune it, but and I loved the fact that I could eat all this stuff that I loved to eat anyway, and felt guilty about eating before. And so that's how I did it, and I'm doing that to this day. I'm the same weight, 72 kilograms, 179 centimeters. You're going to have to put that into imperial, I'm afraid, because despite being born in the UK, I can't remember how the imperial system of measurement and works. But and I've stayed that way for 2.5 years now.
I look at you and I think about my previous guest, Naveen Hitarachi, right? And he was the gentleman who worked with the NBA, the Washington Wizards. I looked at him, and you can see when people are metabolically healthy, right? And I'm sure you didn't look the way you do now back in the day. And I just want to let people know that metabolic health is so critical. And again, just real quick, blood pressure, blood glucose, your waist circumference, triglycerides and HDLs, those are the things we measure. You got to have 3 out of 5 that are not at an ideal level. It's important because, most of the medical conditions, diabetes, hypertension, dementia, they're working on a connection with that in cancer, et cetera, even fibroids. And I'm going to have a guest later this month who's going to talk about the connection between metabolic disease and fibroids and uterine cancer. So it's important that we understand. And what's disappointing, Roderick, is that why does a guy like me have to go to an accidental discovery on YouTube, Facebook, social media to discover this? Why does a guy like you who wants to live a healthy life have to accidentally discover this? Our clinicians should be guiding us. Our nutritionists should be guiding us, our pharmacists. And that's why I'm so proud of Doug Reynolds and and Pam Devine for creating the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners so that we can get all those clinicians in one place, have a society that can then influence other organizations. And I just thank God we have that. So hopefully we'll grow that. And I'm impressed with this idea that you recognize that although exercise is helpful, that's not the secret. That exercise is good for you. We want you to exercise, but if you want to lose weight, exercise is a weight maintenance tool. It's not a weight loss tool. And I also am excited because I had steak yesterday that you're not afraid of fat. So if you're afraid of fat, you're afraid of the wrong thing. You should be afraid of sugar, starchy foods, grainy, too many grains, just like Benny Torters would say, no sugars, no grains. We got to live that type of lifestyle, and then you'll be healthy. And then I want to finally comment that you had the courage. I need you to just tell me, how in the heck do you quit a job? I mean, had you planned for this? Did you kind of suddenly do it? What gave you the courage to do that? Because many people don't achieve their goals in life because they're afraid. They're afraid to jump. Steve Harvey, who's a comedian in the United States, I would Google this, guys. Go to YouTube, put Steve Harvey jump, and look at that video. And he talks about people are afraid to jump. And you jumped. You jumped out of the plane, and you landed safely. So what gave you the courage to do that?
Wow. Well, courage. Yeah. Doc, looking back, I didn't think it was too courageous because I took so long to come to the decision. I mean, I really had spent at least a year thinking about. There was this podcast, Escape the Rat Race, that I was listening to. It was very inspirational. I was reading. I was even Googling, off the grid living, for instance. I mean, even with my wife, we'd wanted to live life differently to the way we were living it. But just we couldn't work it out I did work it out, at least the first part, that I don't want to carry on like this. And once I'd sort of got to that point and, my wife was on board, it was fairly easy. We set an escape date, actually 1 year escape date. We have this kind of joint dream of living in the forest, the mountains of the Shumava, which your Czech community will I'm sure, know all about. And so we said, okay, this is our dream. We're gonna find a place or land to buy to build our dream house there, and one day move out there. And my dream still is, one of the things I wrote down at that time is a list of things I wanted my life to be. And one of them was to lie in the hammock between the trees in the forest, basically. So I will achieve that dream. But I didn't know what I was going to do next. But once I'd done that, it was pretty easy to do, actually. In fact, I couldn't even wait. I had to delay handing in my notice 1 or 2 months. And it was like, oh, God, please let me out. It wasn't... I would point out, because maybe my ex-colleagues will listen to this, it wasn't so much about my closest team, the people I was working with. I mean, there was a good gang there, for sure. But just simply, it was just, I knew this wasn't anymore for me. So once I'd reached that, it wasn't so, I didn't feel like I was jumping off the cliff. It's true, I hadn't set up anything to do afterwards. And one thing I would advise to anybody is find your passion, start doing it before you take the leap. It just makes things a bit easier, and start, just doing it, at least studying, qualifying for it, and even practicing it a little bit before you actually take the leap. It'll just make life a bit easier, the landing a bit softer. Yeah, so that's what I did, and one thing I do as a coach. I mean, you've seen my profile; you'll see it's all about getting fit for the next stage in your career, about metabolic health and weight loss, and thanks to the years of the study, I'm no doctor, but I'm able to condense all that science into something that people can make realistic in their daily lives. Lose weight, get healthy, get energy, so they're ready to crush their career. But actually, the year before that, and I still do this and I offer this, is because I'd worked with CEOs and C-suites. I'd been myself at some sort of higher level of the corporate hierarchy. And I've been through this whole process. I worked out what you need to do it. And it's look at your preferences, how you actually prefer to work. I use MBTI, your values and to how they're being served, your core personal values. We look at your sense of purpose. And then we look at, I already mentioned the unnatural advantages and a few other things. But basically, at the end of it, you get this toolkit that helps you make those decisions confidently because you've now identified who you are, what you're meant to be, and you've got that innate, inherent confidence to go and do it. So it took me about 2 years to work it out. I'm offering it in 10 weeks. So, if you don't have 2 years to think about it, then let's have a chat. But because I was in HR and I've been working with all these managers, a lot of people have told me, the coaching aspect was the best part of my sort of greatest skill. I now know that I hadn't really been coaching. I've been more kind of a trusted partner advisor. But nevertheless, that's what people thought. So, and it was something I wanted where I could make an impact, very strong impact on individuals. And so that's what I went and did my coaching certification over a year. So did I answer your question?
That'll work. That's a great answer, and it's actually complete in that as I listened to you, I thought about Steve Harvey's video, and he talks about the parachute's going to open, and what I'm hearing from you is that your parachute was you were opening literally before you even put your foot out of the plane. You had your parachute already kind of halfway open and you mitigated the risk by doing all those things that you needed. So by the time you jumped, you knew the parachute was going to open up because you were pretty much opening it. And I love that. And one of the things that I will say to anybody listening or watching is, like I'll listen to a guy like in the United States, we got Dave Ramsey, for example. He's the finance guy. He tells you to, get out of debt kind of guy. But what I like about his approach is let's have $1,000 emergency fund. So if the car breaks down, you'll the furnace, but then you'll also have 3 to 6 months of an emergency, your fund to pay your bills if you jump and you're really needing some time to figure things out. So I think the value of having a fund that pays all your bills if for 3 to 6 months is really valuable because then it'll take those handcuffs off, right? And we're all kind of in handcuffs. So living in debt is like being in prison. You'll never have choices. You'll always be kind of having to follow the corporate rules, and it's really not going to allow you to fulfill your life purpose. So appreciate those thoughts because they resonate with me. But being a coach, it's not something you just wake up and want to do one day. So was there, what really triggered the ideal of I need to now take this what I want to do with my life and I want to help other people? What was the real reason why you got into coaching?
Well, to be perfectly honest, it was simply based on that feedback that this is something that I might be good at. I'd had a coach at one point during my corporate career and found it very useful. And it wasn't at that point. Looking back, I know that, in fact, when I look at my whole career, it's been about having an impact, helping others in a positive way, helping them to have an impact. Everything I've done has this thread going through it. I just hadn't articulated it at that time 2.5 years ago. But the coaching course itself it wasn't just about skills and practicing how to coach. That was half of it, but half of it was a personal transformation. I mean, we, the students in this group, were actually going through a kind of a coaching journey and a transformative process. There was a lot of reflective work as well. And I would suggest that, anybody who's thinking about coaching, make sure that they're not just going to be learning skills. Yes, you need techniques. You need to know the background. It's applied psychology. You need to know what's appropriate. But actually, becoming a coach is about creating a mindset, being very knowledgeable about yourself, aware, and creating a mindset where you are open to create, or you're open to that person. You stop assuming, you stop judging, and you accept and welcome that person into the safe space you're creating for them. You start, my trainer called it, you start the coaching dance with the coachee. And that's not something you learn. There's no textbook step by step where you do it. It's because you are able to use all the three levels of listening to really get onto their wavelength. It's a magical thing when it works. So I can't really say I knew that coaching was what I was going to do. So my parachute was half open in that I'd done the maths. I'd mapped our financial situation. I knew how long we had. I knew what we had, etc. So I knew I wasn't going to fall into financial problems immediately. And I had a bit of time to do this. But the coaching, I guess the right things happen at the right time when you're ready to embrace them and welcome them. I guess that's how I'd describe it.
That'll work. And I think I was listening to this concept of the need to, you want to learn new skills and you want to be with somebody that's going to teach you new skills. And I think about even going back to Dave Ramsey, one of the things he says about when you're looking for a financial person, you want to find somebody that has the heart of a teacher, right? So your goal is not to go to a financial person and simply let them tell you what to do. You want somebody that's going to teach you what's going on. And I'll even go as far as a therapist. Like when you think about relationships, and sometimes a therapist in some ways is a coach. But when I read the 7 Principles of Marriage by Gottman, Gottman, which is a great book, by the way, it's like evidence-based. What they said is that only 25% of therapists are successful with their clients. But the Gottman approach is about 75%. But I think the reason why they're more successful is because they have the heart of a teacher. It's not just telling you what's wrong with the relationship. They teach you how to have a better relationship. And I think that that's a different approach, and an approach that we all could benefit from. So again, I think that a good coach would do that, and a good teacher would do that. So now we have a sense of what got you into the coaching profession. If I'm a client who needs to think about having a coach, are there certain types of people who should think about having a coach, or certain circumstances? Talk a little bit about, what that would look like, so people listening would have a sense of whether or not that's something they should consider.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, you talked about teaching. And therapy. I would just like to point out that coaching is actually another branch of that, in that we're not teaching, we are enabling people to teach themselves and to empower themselves and become very self-reliant and response able, and able to live in the present moment, react appropriately, not in that automated fashion that our brains present normally immediately, and to make conscious, informed decisions about basically everything you do. So it's more allowing the coachee that space and empowering them to work it out and create the solutions to their own issues. So to your question, who should perhaps consider coaching? Well, certainly, again, and with the therapy is about, more or less, is looking back at the past. It's about healing wounds, about healing trauma, getting to peace with them. Coaching takes you as you are today, right now. We might look a little bit in the past because that informs the future, but we're looking at the present time, and we're looking at where you want to go in the future and how to get there. It can be practically anything. I focus, simply because I have that personal experience and passion, on those kind of corporate managers, executives in the midlife who are questioning it was good for 20 years, but is this really actually now what I want to do for the next 20, 30, 40 years of my life? So that's one area. The other one is the similar kind of corporate, busy high performers who have neglected their health in building their careers. Okay, so, but with both of them, the goal is to help them realize something and to create realistic action that they can then maintain for the rest of their lives. So to be more specific, it could be something about your career. I mean, I've coached people around their next career move. Okay, so how to go about it actually in the environment that they live in. It could be about professional skills, managing teams, even things like doing better presentations, being more confident. It can be relational, whether that be relations at work or relations at home. There's things about people who are aware that they procrastinate a lot and they want to try and deal with that. Then they're just people who need to have a regular kind of accountability partner who will help them clear the noise and get restarted and remotivated for the next thing that they need to do. Those are kind of long-term clients that I have. So it's anybody who needs to clear the background noise from their heads to get clarity, and that is difficult to do. And in the video, we talked about that a bit. Anybody who wants to achieve something positive but doesn't actually know how to get started. That's I say small steps leads to great things or to greatness. So sometimes you just have to get the ball rolling, and even that first coaching session, just the fact that you've gone to the coach, I've noticed it so many times, things start to happen in that person's lives. It's very bizarre. If you're more mystic minded, you might say the universe is, but the universe, believe it if you will, it's about when you change your mindset, you start noticing different things. If I told you to, talk to you about a particular brand, a brand of car, then I can guarantee that later on today, you will probably start noticing more of this particular brand of car, even though they've been going past you every day for the last, 10 years, the same sort of proportion, because you've brought them into your conscious state from that unconscious state, you will for sure notice more of them. So that's how you get things going. Things start to move. Once things start to move, of course, the world starts pushing back. So that is very useful when you're trying to make a change in your life, but your friends, your family, your whole environment is making it difficult, because when they see a change in you, your environment feels threatened. So they naturally push back. So how to deal with that? And anybody who wants an independent and judgment-free safe space, so they can push forward in their lives. Anybody wants a promotion, midlife reflections, health goals. I mean, actually, essentially, a good coach can deal with anything that someone brings to the table, as long as it's not something that requires therapy. That's the big problem, of course, with the business side, is that to market yourself as I'm a Superman who can deal with anything is quite hard to market. So that's why I focus particularly on the corporate practitioners and on those two, the midlife questioning and the midlife, I need to do something, otherwise I'm going to get some chronic diseases soon.
All right. So that's very helpful. I even as I'm thinking about, like, we've jumped out of a plane, but it sounds like making some incremental change. We definitely want to jump, but then once we jump, we can just focus on incremental change. I think about Dr. David Unwin, our friend in the UK, and his wife, Jen Unwin. Love them. They're awesome. But they have that GRIN acronym, and goals, resources, incremental change for the I, and then noticing those changes for the N. And we, as long as we jump and we start making small changes, and if we can do those changes with a coach who may notice some of the changes and say, hey, just like Serena Williams, let's hold the tennis racket just a little different. You're doing a great job, but maybe if we change that a little bit, and maybe they are the only ones that can see it. You can't see it because you're too busy trying to hit the ball, right? And I think having somebody that's going to hold our hand and say, hey, or when we're jumping out of the plane, I see a mountain, I'm going to stand on top of the mountain just for a minute, gather myself, and then I'm going to keep the fall coming. So I think I'm a visual person, so I'm just trying to put all these thoughts together as you share your expertise, and I appreciate that. So, but I do want to make it easy for people to remember some concepts when they walk away from this conversation. And like you, I have my nest and my rope. You have some mnemonics, some acronyms as well. One of them, and we talked about that in a short video we made, which was the acronym HUMAN, right? And for those listening, you can always check out that video. It'll be on YouTube shortly after we record and release the podcast. But so talk a little bit about the HUMAN acronym, what it represents, and how do you use it, or how we should use it in our lives.
Okay, right, yeah. So we're all human beings, of course, but I invite you to consider that the human state is perhaps a little different to how we kind of consider it in our materialistic world. And I found that those 5 letters really helped me to kind of the concept of the future self, the best possible version of yourself, if you like, that many of your listeners may resonate with them. So yeah, the H in human is about having a healthy body and a healthy mind. So when your body's not working, for instance, metabolic disease or any other kind of chronic disease, they're not all metabolic, but if your body's obstructing you in some way, it's quite difficult to become the best version of yourself. The same goes with your healthy mind, and I'm very pleased that unfortunately, thanks to the pandemic, this whole idea of mindfulness and mental health is coming much more to the forefront, particularly in that corporate space. People are much more aware of the importance of that, and I think people have suffered a lot in the last year and a half. So healthy body and healthy mind. That's the H of human. Then you've got the U. And this means unique and aware of what makes you special. And I think a lot of times we are kind of the way we're educated, the way we're brought up is to be the average, to be the mean. We're always comparing ourselves with the average. And if you stand out at either end of that bell curve, then you might feel weird or left out. But actually, each individual is unique in many ways, and it's the way that the genes we've received, the upbringing we've had, those formative years. Then you've got the way we learn, the education, the certification, the skills that we've studied and practiced to be able to master. And then all the life experiences and work experiences that we've experienced that have given us something that we take forward. So all 3 of these aspects, these unnatural advantages, are ones that make us each individual unique. And what's more, we're all experiencing them in our own individual way. But that's the first thing. But being aware of what makes you special is so important. It's empowering, it's confidence inspiring, it's very important to your feeling of self-worth. If you're applying for a job, then you want to stand out. So be yourself, be unique, and embrace your uniqueness. So that's the U. M. Motivated to make a dent in the universe. Okay, and this is all much about this life's purpose that is so kind of poignant in that midlife, and unfortunately, in our younger years, we're not really led to really think about that. We happen, it's based on our grades and what we're best at. We tend to go on to do, and because we're good at that, we tend to do that, and then we fall into this kind of golden yellow brick road of employment and career rise, and we kind of forget what is actually going to be the thing we want to tell our grandchildren when we're 70 or 80, sitting in the rocking chair on the porch, and say we did with our lives. So that and that's pretty hard to find what your dent in the universe could be. But once you found it, then you talked before we started about, they're really busy, but you just drive on because you're doing what your life's purpose is. I think you even use the expression. And once you found your life's purpose, actually you are suddenly equipped with so much energy and motivation, and even the biggest obstacles suddenly reduce in front of you as you go. The A is for agent, and I mean by that in charge of your thoughts and your life. And again, very often we let life happen to us, and even more so, we think that it couldn't be any other way. And actually, you can positively influence the way your life goes. And you do that by being an agent, an agency, as in the way you respond to what's going on outside and inside you. And you said you're a visual person, so I invite you to consider this. You're driving along the highway, or along the road, and you never notice the traffic lights and the junction that's behind the traffic. You just keep going straight on. But when you become agent, or I call it response able, you suddenly notice the traffic light there, and that there's a turning, and you stop going so fast, and you take a moment to think, okay, so do I want to carry straight on, or do I want to turn right? And then you make a conscious, informed choice. And when you are able to make a choice, when you give yourself choice, you're creating freedom, by the way. Then that means you are agent in your own life. So often our brain simply blinds us to the one habitual way that we've been thinking and working. And an N, nourished body and mind. So this is a bit different to health. This is about nourishing it, giving it what it needs to thrive. And body, I think, you're the expert, and all your podcasts, I've learned from them about nourishing the body and nourishing the mind. It's about creating valuable experiences. That's whether it be going into a place of natural beauty, or reading a book, or museums you talked about. You are nourishing your children's minds already at an early age by taking them to all those museums. So that's also very important. So HUMAN, human, that's the acronym I sort of created by chance.
And yeah, it's well, it gives us another way of looking at life through a different lens, and each of those letters, being healthy, unique, motivated, agency, nourished. For me, the agency is the one that I jotted down. Not letting life happen to you and make something happen. And what it does, and what it's done for me, as I've kind of taken time to do this work. The podcast, the YouTube videos. Getting involved with the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners, writing a column with the Diet Doctor. These things take time, but I feel like I'm living my purpose, right? So I'm going to continue to, and I live my purpose when I see my patients. But man, when you can kind of, get into your agency and make things happen, it changes everything. So I do love that A and that human a lot. And I think they all are valuable. Clearly, I like the nourished body and healthy. Clearly, I like those things as well. So that's a great way for our listeners to walk away with something that's easy to remember. And I think that they'll receive value from that. But there's another mnemonic. There's another one that you embrace, and that's the free. The word free. So I want to talk a little bit about what that means, and so our listeners can get some value out of that one as well. So tell us a little bit about that one.
Sure. So, I think, or at least in my opinion and in my point of view, I think freedom is the ultimate goal. It's the ultimate state. And when people will talk about financial freedom, or freedom from some sort of political restrictions, etc. As we're always looking for freedom from the golden handcuffs, something we talked about. So freedom is kind of the ultimate goal for many people, and I'd say it's the ultimate state. And I call free. The F is for fulfilled. So it means you're not just simply, exchanging time for money. as maybe 80% of people around the world, employees around the world apparently are, which is a Gallup poll, the state of the global workforce, I think it's called, from 2014, 2016. They discovered like over 80% are simply exchanging time for money. So fulfill, doing something that you really get that nourishment from, that you see the sense in waking up to do. What do you do every day? I get up in the morning to do this. And that's a good sentence you can try and practice to find what answers you'll come to. So that's your fulfillment. Response able, the R from free, response able. It's not responsible, as in meaning in charge of something. It's response able, the ability to respond adequately to everything that's going on outside you, but also inside you. And we talked about this with the agency. And I talked about creating the freedom of choice when things happen to you, not reacting in your biochemical already, you've been doing for 40 years in that way, but actually identifying what's happening inside, why that's happening, and then asking yourself, I call them freedom questions with my clients, a question that will give you the freedom of choice. And when you can live your life as much as possible in that way, then you realize that you are free, because you don't have to explode when your child is irritating you. You don't have to get offended by this person. I mean, I won't go into that story about a psychopath back in my corporate days. But I realized backwards that he was, as psychopaths are very good at doing, was doing things specifically to get you into a place where you're uncomfortable. But if you are able to identify what's going on inside you, why you're reacting that way, then you can actually ask yourself the question, okay, do I need to react like this? Or is there perhaps a different way I can react that's going to be better for the outcome of the situation? So it's this ability to kind of, in the here and now, stop and give yourself the opportunity of deciding differently than you might do otherwise. You don't have to, but you have the freedom of choice. Energized, this is perhaps down to, back to our kind of the health, the nourished body and brain, because, I'm sure many of your patients, and you've talked about it, and I experienced it too, is that when you are well nourished and you are living clean, let's say, then you get this energy, and whether it's been fasting for more than a couple of days, or whether it be ketones, etc., that brings a lot of clarity and energy that you perhaps hadn't enjoyed in that carb fog, the carb brain fog. So energized and enthusiastic, and enthusiastic about life, enthusiastic about your future. That's a mindset where you are looking at things, how to make them positive rather than dwelling in the negative stuff. And it's amazing how if you are able to, let's say, create a more positive mindset, that you actually enjoy life more simply. I mean, if you're always dwelling on all the stuff that's bad and critical, and the brain is excellent at, once we have a narrative in our head, then the brain will push every evidence of that narrative, and you won't see the rest of what's good. So train your brain, create a change in how you see things by seeing the positive side and that mindset. And then you'll suddenly start seeing all the wonderful things around you, and the negative stuff will just be, So there you go. That's free, fulfilled, response able, energized, enthusiastic. Sounds like freedom to me. What do you think?
Thank you. I was, man, you better know it. And I was thinking about this energy, and when I'm going to be speaking at Low Carb USA in San Diego, I think it's in August. So for those who want to participate in that, definitely check out Low Carb USA's website. But I'll probably talk about the mitochondria and how the root cause of a lot of disease is a dysfunctional mitochondria. But like you said, there's a lot of things. Your magnesium level affects it. CoQ10, what you eat, how your brains function, all those things can affect your mitochondria. And if the mitochondria is dysfunction, guess what? Your energy level is not going to be good, because that's the energy source of our body, So it's just all this stuff is interconnected. And that's why I think it's important. As I think about your acronyms, I think about mine. It's not just about what you eat. It's deeper than that. It's so many. And that's why we're talking to a coach today, guys, because it's deeper than just your diet. It's deeper than just whether you exercise or not. It's deeper than whether you're fasting or, it's all of those things together. And I think that, we need to be mindful of that so that we can make better decisions on where are the gaps and where do we need to fill them. So that is perfect. And I'd be remiss to talk to a guy with your background. And I know there's things going on for a guy that's been born in London, right? So they have that European Super League issue that's going on in your neck of the woods. And, a lot of my American friends and family and colleagues may not even know what that's all about. So could you talk a little bit about what the European Super League issue is right now? And if you were a coach, if you were coaching them, if you were their coach, how would you guide them to deal with such a controversial topic? Just give me a few moments to talk about that.
Okay. Well, I'll be brief. I'm pretty sure I'll be as brief as possible. So I'm not sure it's really quite exactly so of such importance to your audience in particular, in the US, but in Europe and in the UK in particular, this was a huge thing. And basically, very as quick as possible, Sunday the 18th of April, the top 12 European soccer clubs, football in my part of the world, soccer clubs in Europe, announced a breakaway independent league. And these are the richest clubs, the most powerful clubs. And basically, there was also there was the possibility that a club that was created 140 years ago in Liverpool or Manchester or in London could suddenly be playing its matches in a different part of the world just because it earns the owners more money and more TV rights, or even become a franchise. I know in the States, sports franchises are fairly common, but this is something in Europe and the UK in particular that is very antithesis to the idea, particularly of soccer, because soccer clubs arose from the factory workers, the miners, the kind of the industrial workforce of the country, and that's how. And it was a communal thing. It was a way of coming together as a community when you have to work 6 days a week in shifts during the Industrial Revolution and after that. So when these multi-billionaire global owners that most of these, or all these 12 clubs anyway, are owned by, want to take that away from the community, they're taking out the lifeblood of people. For generations, the Saturday afternoon match has been the one point in life that they look forward to most of all. That's why they work Monday or Sunday to Friday. I don't know what it was, right, 150 years ago. But it was, and it was passed down through generations. Suddenly, because of money and global business, this was going to be ripped out. So 18th of April, it was announced. By the 21st of April, the whole plan had fallen apart because of the uproar it had caused. Why it's at all relevant to what we've been talking about earlier is that we've become accustomed to the kind of globalized corporate world taking over the things that are important to us. So, you can have a job and suddenly somewhere 2,000 miles away decides that job is not going to be in this city. It's going to be moved 4,000 miles to a different country. And that's the material thing. We can get by. We might have a hard time, but we will find another job somehow. But the more and more this corporate global world is starting to threaten to take away the stuff that is actually our value chain, in our value chain, what the integral part of us, our purpose in life. And football, soccer may sound a bit strange, but I tried to explain why it's so important. And we hear now all the stuff about mindfulness and looking well, and the stakeholder capitalism that's being bandied around by big four consulting and huge global corporations. And I'm a bit concerned that this is all just hot air. And actually, if we let them get their grubby mitts on it, then we might end up with some of the heart being ripped out of us as well. And we've seen where the disengaged populations, what they can do, whether it be Brexit, and I don't want to get all political, but the last 4 years in the States too has been perhaps also a certain element of disengagement of people with the political class and financial class. And this I'm worried that this may continue and accelerate. So the coaching part is, how do you set yourself in that world to thrive and not be down-spirited, the rat treadmill thing. And with the human and the free mnemonics are ones that could help to cope with this. So to a question about how I would coach the owners of these clubs, that's a very important thing about being a coach. You have to know when you can say, I can't coach you. Because the beauty of coaching is that you are an impassionate, unprejudiced actor in that person's story. And if I had to go and coach these owners of these 12 clubs, I couldn't be, because I care about it too much. And I would be in danger of influencing their story, their actions, their thoughts with my own prejudice. So, I would tell them, you must be out of your minds. Are you aware that you are taking away something that is for generations part of their life routine? But I could offer that as observation as a coach, but I would be in danger of getting all passionate and telling them, are you crazy? Because they were crazy. And we think billionaires are going to be super intelligent people. I don't know. These 12 people, 12 club owners or corporations that own them, didn't demonstrate a lot of intelligence, and particularly emotional intelligence at all. So I actually would have to probably reverse back out of a coaching engagement in this particular case.
Very, very helpful. And I like the way you connected those dots there. And it definitely wanted to get some insights, because I'm not as familiar with what's going on over there, but I like the way you connected those dots. So appreciate that. And I think we'll have just a couple of more questions to wrap up. And when I think about, successes, right? A lot of it comes down to how we think, right? So many of us think a certain way because we've been given standards or expectations. When I recently released a video with Nina Teichels, and we talked a little bit about how the dietary guidelines don't serve us, particularly communities of color. And we had this standard, this way of thinking about the guidelines that they serve us. So we just kind of blindly follow that, right? So I know that as a coach, you have to help people think differently as well, so they won't get trapped in old beliefs or old ways of thinking. And so when you're trying to help people achieve their ideal state, how hard is it to get people to think differently or to think outside the box?
Right. Okay. Well, the first thing I'd say about that is that it reminds me of the film, The Matrix. If you're oblivious to what's wrong, then you'll just continue to be oblivious. The coach. Someone comes to the coach. It's the coach doesn't get people to think differently. But what happens is a client feels something isn't quite right. That's where it starts, and whatever the subject might be. They've got a problem they want to solve or a goal they want to reach, but they don't know where to start. So when they come to the coach helps them to find new perspectives and avenues of action, acting as a mirror. So we are mirroring their observations, their thoughts. Occasionally we may offer a reflection or observation of our own as an offering for them to consider. But we're reflecting back to the coachee their words, because the verbal and the paraverbal is very important, but also their emotions, like their body language, because when you get to a certain level of listening ability, you actually notice the emotions on that person. So you can ask them, what's going on there? And that is a really useful point for them to stop. And often it will release some new thought from under the surface, from that subconscious into the conscious mind, that helps propel them often a different thought process than the one that their brain is telling them to do. So it's about gentle probing and posing thought-provoking questions. So it is a process that leads people to think differently, to see their world differently, and it's a lot to do with helping them access the subconscious, and also people journal. That's very handy because you're articulating thoughts in writing. So with the coaching process, is a safe space to articulate and externalize those thoughts and goals, and then to sort of see them like a camera moving around. In fact, that's what a technique you can use is them to actually view themselves from outside. So that's great as well. A lot of people have self-limiting beliefs. I call them saboteurs. That is basically, it's a voice, it's a mental program that was installed during their formative years, normally, growing up or teenage years or early 20s, etc. And it was there to actually help them once upon a time. But at a certain point in time, that voice that your brain is pushing, that inner voice that we all have, is actually it's a strong obstacle. So again, we help them to articulate, to observe, to make it, to externalize that inner voice, to see it, to appreciate what it was trying to do, to see how it's blocking you now, and to formulate a response that when you notice the saboteur, then you can actually respond and create the choice. Yes, the saboteur is right, or no, saboteur, thank you, I know you're helping me, but I'm going to do it differently. So that's another way of doing something differently to the way that your brain processes would normally do. We can use, I use Myers-Briggs type identifiers as a way to help people understand the way that they are, their preferred way of actually viewing the world, observing it, making decisions, interacting with it. That can help immensely, because the way that the education system in particular works, it's very unified and doesn't allow for the different ways that people observe. The most obvious example is introverts, extroverts. Extroverts always get on well in organizations because they're always thinking out loud. They're the ones at the meetings who are heard. And the introverts, who may have just as valuable ideas, sit there quietly waiting. Maybe they're still processing their thought process is internal. And they're the ones who, after the meeting, will go to the boss and say, "But boss, how about this?" And the boss says, "Why didn't you say it in the meeting?" Well, actually, boss, you didn't give the introverts that safe space to voice their thoughts. So, boss, you got to think about how you do things. Don't let the extroverts take over things. So yeah, and it's experiential. I mean, a coaching session should always end with some sort of actionable outcome that the coachee can go and try. Something small steps lead to greatness. That they can go and try, observe, see what changes, what the reactions are, but small enough so they have to have the will and the confidence to do it, which they get from the coaching session. And the coachees talk about the aha moments, and those are moments of immense energy release. It's quite incredible. One of my clients, I have to have a big box of Kleenex, of tissues, because when she gets this aha moment, not because she's kind of upset or sad, it's just so strong that she starts crying. So we have to have lots of handkerchiefs for her to blow her nose and recover herself. But so yeah, that's I've kind of tried in a long way around to explain how to help people to see their world a little bit differently to the way that they've spent maybe 20, 30, 40 years of experiencing their world.
Excellent. The coach also has to see his year and what he's going to do as well. So as a coach, I want you to think about what your 2021 is going to look like. And even the coach has to work on himself. And so my question is, for 2021, when you think about the nest and the rope, rather it's the nutrition, the exercise, less stress, more sleep, how we think, avoiding trauma, nurturing your relationships, avoiding organisms and pollutants that harm us, and making sure your life experience and your emotions are protected. Where are you going to put your focus over the next year?
Well, yeah, thanks. And I did look at, of course, your acronyms, and so I prepared it. I'll go as quickly as possible through nutrition. So I want to experiment a bit with longer fasting. I mean, 2.5 years I've been doing intermittent fasting. I'd like to try perhaps a 2-day fast, for instance, see what happens, just to experience it. And I would like to increase my protein intake. It did increase when I went to low carb, but I've been listening to a lot of Ted Naiman, the new Diet Doctor, of course, has had 2 very informative podcasts on that. So I want to up my protein content a bit. Exercise, I like a lot of exercise things like biking with the family, running and stuff. But I need to build some muscle. I'd like to build some muscle. I mean, I'm a bit scrawny these days, and I think so. I'm experimenting with I can't even pronounce his name. Bonokekio, is that correct? Dr. Ben, he calls himself. He's a fitness trainer, and I bought his book, The Smart.
He's awesome.
2 times 15 minutes to fitness. So I'm going to try that coming up soon. My Friday posts will be about my experiences with that. Sleep stress. I loved your podcast, your interview with Dr. Michael Bruce Boyce. So, I've already tried the banana tea. Bruce, sorry, the banana tea I've tried already, and actually, I must say, my sleep app suggested that my percentage of deep sleep in those nights was a bit higher. Thoughts, trauma. I think what me and my family need, and what the world needs, is to have a really great summer. So I want to have a really great summer with my wife and my son. The last 14 months have been miserable in that aspect. So. With that respect, so I want to have a really great summer, which takes me to rope of the relationships is the same. I want to have a great summer with my wife and my son, and also actually I want to meet up with some friends that I haven't been able to meet up with for such a long time. Organism. Since I changed my dietary lifestyle, I practically haven't been ill. Common colds, flus. At most, I have a temperature for a day, and then it's gone. So I'm not too worried about that. I know the big C word is here. COVID is still around, and I've escaped it so far. So obviously, touch wood, I'll keep trying to escape the COVID, but I'm not too worried about organisms in particular. Pollutants, I mean, for me, that's spending time in the countryside. The fresh air in the forest, etc. And emotions and life experiences, very simple. In 1 year's time, I want to be 1 year further on my path to my dream. So it's, the house is going up already. So every year we're getting just that one more step closer to that dream. So there you go.
Awesome. And what's beautiful, you're probably the second or third person that kind of looked at multiple components of the nest and the rope. And I think that ultimately there's a lot of things that we want to work on. So I'm right there with you. I have multiple things I'm focused on. So I just hope that those words inspire somebody who's listening or watching to do the same. And I know that people may want to see your activities. I know you have things out there you're working on. I know you make videos. So share with the audience how they can reach you if they want to find your work.
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely follow me on LinkedIn. I'm most active there. Or look me up on Facebook. Basically, they're both personal profiles, so you can follow me on both. And in the very near future, I'm going to set up a Facebook personal page. and probably a company page, which I'm thinking of calling Free and Human or Human and Free. So by the time this comes out, it may already exist. So follow me there, or just reach out to me via the messenger, Facebook, LinkedIn. I'm very happy to meet new people and just have a chat over a coffee or whatever online with anybody. One thing as an introvert, I'm not naturally lent to going out and spending time with lots of people and meeting new people. That's just simply not where that tires me. But since I've been doing this new job, I just absolutely love meeting new people, and I'm always enriched by it in some way. So please contact me, because I wish to be enriched by whoever you are, and to hear your story. So please enrich me.
That sounds like Naveen, who was my last guest. He said the same thing. He gets fulfilled as he meets and interacts and shares and helps people. So I think that's probably a similar medical condition that you have, which is you guys get benefit from that. And I think I do too. So thank you. I really appreciate you sharing your expertise. I am a huge fan of you. I'm a fan of coaching. And I just think that it's wonderful that we have people like yourself in the world to help people along their way. So thank you for being on today's podcast.
Doc, it's been an absolute pleasure.
So guys, yeah, it's been awesome. So, and I really appreciate you. So guys, as we kind of wrap up this episode, today's guest has sparked our interest in another way to protect your nest. Today we learned that our goals, our priorities, and even our ability to fulfill our life purpose may be a little easier if we only had a coach, right? If Oprah, Bill Clinton, and actresses like Nia Long have coaches, why not us, right? A coach can provide clarity to help us achieve our goals. They can help us answer the questions, why were we born? So that we can do the things we came here to do. A coach may just be the missing piece you've been missing. So an accountability partner, somebody that's going to help you along your way. So I really love the idea of working in collaboration with a coach that's going to help me along my way. So I'm just grateful that you are allowing me to be like a virtual coach with this podcast so that you can learn from experts like our guests who are going to help us along our way. So guys, as we close, again, I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. Share this message with others. And until we meet again, be safe, be well, and continue to protect your nest.